Over 2 million Americans died in 2014. Fewer than 4,000 had a net worth of over $8 million when they passed away. One of them was Ronald Reed, a janitor and a gas station attendant. Don't expect a rags to riches story here. Ronald's life story was uneventful. He worked at the gas station for 25 years and swept floors for another 17 years. He was widowed at age 50 and never remarried. So where did he get all that money? The answer is simple. He saved whatever he could and invested in blue chip stocks. But here's what might surprise you. In the same year, another man filed for bankruptcy. Richard Fosconi was a Harvard-educated Merrill Lynch executive and retired in his 40s. But he borrowed a lot of money to renovate a giant mansion. And then the 2008 recession hit. It turned his finances into dust. A janitor died richer than a Harvard executive. How's that for a headline? According to Morgan Housel, author of the book Psychology of Money, this story proves that financial success is not a hard science. Instead, it is a soft skill where your behavior is more important than what you know. In his book, Morgan Housel dives deep into these soft skills, and here I have summarized 13 of its best lessons. This video will inspire you to pick up the book and start your journey towards financial freedom. Lesson 1. What you think about money is more important than what is happening with the economy. Your experience with money makes up maybe 0.0001% of what happened in the world, and maybe 80% of how you think the world works. You may have noticed that millennials are not buying homes like baby boomers. 45% of baby boomers bought their first home between the ages of 25 and 34. Only 37% of millennials between the ages of 25 and 34 currently own homes. People from different generations think, feel, and act differently about money. Personal elements such as differences in job markets, ages, and geographical regions influence our thoughts about money. In addition, people have unique beliefs about money and wealth, which affect their behavior towards money. Housel tells us that what you do with money is more important than the value of the stocks or economic recession. Most of us make financial decisions to avoid losses rather than maximize returns. For example, think of these two scenarios. Suppose a person told you that they had an opportunity for you, and they said that you had to invest your hard-earned $10,000 into their project. But the catch is that you will either double your money or lose all of it. Then another person told you to invest the same amount of money but make 30% profit guaranteed. However, this project has no risk of losing money. So which one would you choose? The person who chooses the first scenario is driven by the desire to make a lot of money. The one who chooses the second scenario wants to avoid disappointment. The first person can maybe afford to take the risk, perhaps because they have a safety net to fall back on, or because they learned the principle of no risk, no reward, or maybe they're just greedy. The second person is being frugal and cautious. And to top it all off, financial concepts are pretty new for human beings, evolutionarily speaking. For thousands of years, retirement was not an option. You just worked until you died. Compound interest, debt, and index funds weren't necessary when our brain was evolving to escape predators. No wonder people have all sorts of strange notions about money. Ultimately, no one is crazy. What works for you may not work for your friend or colleague because their unique values and goals drive their financial decisions. Lesson 2. Pay attention to broad patterns. Nothing is as good or as bad as it seems because luck and risk play an essential role when making money. Forces beyond individual effort guide every outcome in our life. To illustrate this point, Housel gives the example of Bill Gates. Gates attended the only high school in the world that had a computer. If he had ended up at any other high school, his interest in computers might not exist. As a result, his journey to wealth may never have begun. He also mentions Kent Evans, Gates' best friend in 8th grade. Kent would have been Gates' partner at Microsoft, but died in a mountaineering accident before graduating high school. Housel states that the odds of being killed on a mountain in high school are roughly 1 in a million. There are only 3 dozen mountaineering deaths annually in the US. These are examples of luck and risk in our lives. How many times have you prepared for something and it did not happen? And how often has something good happened to you without expecting it? Imagine this, you spend 5 days preparing for an interview. And just by chance, they asked you the very questions you managed to study. Now imagine the second scenario. You have been too busy to prepare for an interview. But when you wake up for the day, you receive an email informing you that the interview is postponed. How fortunate, right? So there's an element of luck in all our endeavors, including making money. Housel writes, "Not all success is due to hard work, and not all poverty is due to laziness. Keep this in mind when judging people, including yourself." Housel uses the story of Bill Gates to warn us not to focus too much on studying the success of singular individuals. The lessons learned from such accounts are less generalizable. We all love a good story of rags to riches, but we forget that the more extreme a case is, the more luck and risk influence it. If you want to learn the key to success, you're better off learning the broad patterns of success and failure. For example, how Warren Buffett got rich using investing is not a broad pattern, it's an individual story. However, most people who do get rich somehow leverage the power of compounding. The first is a story, the second is a pattern. When things are going well for you, take notice of the role of luck and remember that risk can make things worse. And when things are not going well, do not be as pessimistic as to think that all your decisions were bad while overlooking the role of risk. Lesson 3. Know when you have enough. Greed is a bottomless pit which exhausts the person in an endless effort to satisfy the need without ever reaching satisfaction. Eric Fromm. Most rich people do not understand the concept of enough. Rajat Gupta was among the wealthiest businessmen in the world, but he got caught for insider trading because he wanted to make a few more millions. Greed lets you make foolish decisions. Business people like Rajat Gupta are driven by the desire for more money. A person driven by greed will risk hundreds of millions of dollars to make more money. Such an individual will bet what they have and need to make money they don't need. If you risk something important to you for something unimportant to you, it just does not make any sense. So how do you know when you have enough? Most people just want a little more of what they already have. They want a better car than their friends or a better house. The trend of trying to outdo your peers and trying to one-up each other will keep you chasing more than you need. To know when you have reached enough, you must get the goalpost to stop moving. If you keep changing your goal, you will never have a sense of enough. Let's say your goal is to buy a Honda Civic, and once you purchase it, you're happy. But then after a few weeks, you notice your friend driving a new BMW X3 and suddenly you want one. So you sell your Honda Civic and buy the BMW. But a few months later, you hear your other friend praising his new Mercedes. So you go for it, but soon after you hear about someone having a Porsche and the wheel never stops. You keep moving your goalpost and nothing is quite enough. Housel tells the story of Joseph Heller, the author of the novel Catch-22. At a dinner party, Heller's friend informed him that their host, a billionaire, had made more money in one day than Heller had earned from his novel. To this information, Heller said, "I've got something he can never have, the knowledge that I've got enough." This is an excellent example of knowing where to plant your goalpost and keeping it from moving. Social comparison is the reason most of us will never feel that we have made enough money. But if we know our goal and stop comparing it to other people's goals, we can avoid falling into the trap of greed. Housel writes, "The ceiling of social comparison is so high that virtually no one will ever hit it. It's a battle that can never be won. The only way to win is to not fight, to accept that you might have enough, even if it's less than those around you." Lesson 4. Leverage the power of time and consistency. A quote that's often attributed to Einstein goes, "Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it." Something big can grow from relatively small changes in the right conditions. For example, you can start with a small amount of money, and it can grow over the years into an amount you could not have anticipated due to compound interest. Sometimes all you need is time to achieve something extraordinary. Say a person starts investing when they're 10 years old, and by age 30, they have a net worth of $9.3 million. If this person continued to invest decently, they would inevitably become a multi-billionaire in their 60s. This was the case with Warren Buffett. Buffett began investing when he was 10 years old, and he had a net worth of $9.3 million by the time he was 30. While Buffett is a skilled investor, his true secret to success has been time. Housel estimates that if Buffett had started investing in his 30s and retired in his 60s, his net worth would be 99.9% less than where it is now. Time is a critical driver of success. A slight growth at the moment can fuel future growth and give results that defy logic. Exponential growth is the reason compounding is so powerful. Good investing is not necessarily about earning the highest returns, because the highest returns tend to be one-off hits. It's about earning pretty good returns that you can stick with and which can be repeated for the longest period of time. So why do most people ignore this? As I mentioned earlier, compounding is a relatively new phenomena, evolutionarily speaking. The human mind has a hard time comprehending anything that grows exponentially. For example, if you improve by 1% daily, you expect the line to go somewhat like this. However, the line would increase exponentially in reality, and you would be 37.7 times better after a year. That is the power of compounding, but it doesn't come naturally to us. Lesson 5. Minimize your losses and risks. When you know the strategies to be good at investing, making money can become manageable. However, holding on to that money can be a challenge. We all know of people who made millions only to lose it in a couple of years. Getting money is one thing, but keeping it is another, because these two states require different skills. To earn money, you need optimism, the willingness to take risks, and the capacity to put yourself out there. However, to keep this money, you need to take fewer risks, be more frugal, and remember the role of luck and risk. Remember that the wealth you have made is mainly dependent on luck. Your results may not be replicated if you lose what you have and you try again. When it comes to keeping money, there is some truth to the statement, only the paranoid survive. To save money, you must remember that tomorrow is not guaranteed to be like yesterday. So do not be complacent and assume that yesterday's success automatically leads to tomorrow's good fortune. One way to remain wealthy is to plan and then plan on the plan, not going according to plan. Remaining wealthy takes planning. Lesson 6. Learn to take the losses. You can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune. Not all investments will pay off, some of them will fail. To make wealth, learn not to be pessimistic because of the losses you incur. Human brains are wired to remember when things go wrong to avoid similar losses. As a result, we tend to remember the bad more than the good. Unfortunately, we also overestimate how bad a situation is when it isn't that bad. Have you ever experienced something that you thought was terrible and humiliating, and a friend said, "It's not that bad," and true to their word, a few days later, it doesn't bother you as it did earlier? At one point or another, we all have experienced something we thought we couldn't recover from, and yet we did. Most people underestimate how normal it is for many things to go wrong, causing them to overreact when things fail. Walt Disney was a successful inventor, yet his first studio went bankrupt. His movies were expensive to produce. In the beginning, things went wrong more often than they did right. But in 1938, he made Snow White, which earned him $8 million and changed the course of his success. Walt Disney's story shows us that most people pay attention to the vast and profitable outcomes. They forget that such a result is often rare and a result of many failures. It is what Housel refers to as a tail event. A tail event is an outcome linked to a given infinite sequence. Essentially, it is a low probability event. For example, making a massive amount of money is a tail event, yet most of us only pay attention to the result of a tail event and underestimate how rare and powerful they are. Before you can become a master at anything, you must encounter failures. But you must not let yourself be deterred by failures. The same trend and pattern apply to making money. When investing, people want to overlook the failures. However, they need to remember that only a handful of companies account for most of the returns in the market, and that the tail events within these companies are even rarer. So how do you prepare for the losses and leverage the tail events? Housel quotes Napoleon Bonaparte. According to him, a genius is the man who can do the average thing when all those around him are going crazy. The decisions you make during the few days when everyone else around you is panicking will cause the most significant number of successes. Imagine a student starting to prepare for the end of the semester from week 1 of class. This student continues their study routine from week 1 to the week before the exam while everyone is going crazy. And then there's another student who prepares a few days before the exam when everyone goes crazy and panics. Who among these two is likely to score better on the exam? No one makes good decisions all the time. Consider the losses that lead to the tail event, and then when that arrives, maximize that opportunity. Lesson 7. Manage your time. The ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want, is priceless. It is the high-end dividend money pays. Most of us want to be wealthy so we can be happy. However, a common factor for happiness is a solid sense of control over your life. Having control of what you want to do and for how long is a significant driver for joy. Money gives you power and control over your time. It leads to increased independence and autonomy. When you know you have unspent assets and a disposable income, you have control over your schedule. If you have a small amount of wealth, it allows you to have some flexibility. For instance, if you have 6 months worth of expenses in savings, you know you can wait for an excellent job to come along if you get laid off. It allows you to not be scared of your boss because you know you can afford a few unpaid months if you have to find a new job. Money enables you the luxury of buying time and options. Most people hate being forced to do something, even if they want to do it in the first place. Imagine yourself at home. You're about to finish watching a movie. You plan to finish and then complete your chores. But then your roommate comes in and tells you to do the dishes, and suddenly you don't feel like doing it anymore. Scientists have a term for this: psychological reactance. Psychological reactance is our brain's response to a threat to our freedom. Threats to freedom include anytime someone suggests or makes you do something. The same happens with your work and money. Even when you start a job that you love, your morale will wane if you constantly work on a schedule you cannot control. People want to feel in control. If you force them into something, they will feel disempowered. And this is perhaps the best motivation you can have to make money. It is to be able to control your time so you can have more freedom and experience more joy in your life. Lesson 8. People will not be as impressed with your material possessions as you are. When you see someone driving a nice car, you rarely think, wow, the guy driving that car is cool. Instead, you think, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool. Subconscious or not, this is how people think. One of the primary reasons people want to be wealthy is to gain the respect and admiration of others. What they forget is that money does not earn them respect and admiration. People will admire their properties but often overlook those behind the possessions. So this point is an important concept in the psychology of money. Don't try to impress others with your material possessions because rarely will people think that you're that cool. Lesson 9. Wealth is what you don't see. Now going back to our previous point, many people buy fancy cars and houses to convince others that they're rich. Sometimes people will even take out loans to buy a better car than their friends. But unfortunately, they forget that spending money to show others that you're wealthy is the quickest way to lose it. We do not have access to people's bank accounts or list of assets. All we can use to judge their wealth is what they show us, their cars, homes, and Instagram posts. The singer Rihanna almost went bankrupt and sued her financial advisor. Exasperated, the advisor asked, was it really necessary to tell her that if you spend your money on things, you will end up with things and not the money? To understand what Housel means, you need to understand the difference between rich and wealthy. Rich people have nice things. They buy fancy cars and fancy houses. This does not mean that wealthy people don't buy nice cars or homes. The difference is, wealthy people have assets. They have money not spent and assets that have yet to be converted into things you can see. If your friend can afford a car worth $80,000, they are rich. Because even if they did buy it with a loan, you need a certain income level for the bank to finance such a car. However, wealth is about value. Wealth gives you options and growth so that in the future you can purchase even more stuff. When most people do a good job and get paid, they feel that they have worked hard. Therefore, they treat themselves by purchasing something nice. However, to become wealthy, you must resist this urge to reward yourself. Discipline and self-control will allow you to accrue wealth and not just material possessions. Most people say they want to be rich, but if they really think about it, they actually want to be wealthy. For example, a person with a job that pays him $1 million a year but has to work 80 hours a week and cannot travel, has high living expenses, is technically rich but not wealthy. If you could make half that much and have more free time to make high quality decisions, Save and invest for the long term, you are wealthy. Lesson 10. Learn to save money. The most important factor when building wealth is the rate of your savings, not your income or investment returns. You have no control over the markets. You don't know whether your investing strategy will work or how long it will work. The only aspect you control is your savings and financial frugality. Your wealth building potential is powered by your frugality and efficiency. As mentioned earlier, wealth is what is left and accumulated after you spend what you need. Therefore, you can have more wealth if you pay less and save more. You don't need a high income to build wealth. This concept ties back to lesson 3, keeping the goalpost from moving. Imagine person A, let's call him Dave. Dave makes $40,000 annually but only spends $30,000 on expenses while saving the remaining $10,000 consistently without fail. After 3 years, Dave's income increases to $60,000 but he does not increase his expenses. So he increases his savings to $30,000. Now imagine person B. Let's call her Kara. Kara earns the same amount as Dave, and their expenses and savings are the same. However, when Kara receives an increase in income, she increases her expenses also, rather than her savings. In 6 years, Dave will have saved up $1,200,000, while Kara will have saved only $60,000. Even if Kara invested in portfolios that gave her higher returns than Dave, she would still have a lower net worth. So essentially, what is the difference between these two? Dave managed to keep his expenses from increasing. He exercised frugality and financial discipline. He kept his goalpost from moving. On the contrary, Kara's lifestyle increased with her income. She kept the goalpost moving and as a result has a lower net worth. Savings can be created by spending less. Spending less is dependent on your desires, and you desire less when you care less about what others think of you. Lesson 11. It's better to be more reasonable than clinically rational. Everything requires a balance. Try not to be coldly rational when making financial decisions. Most financial decisions are made at the dinner table with friends and peers in mind. If you endeavor to overlook that you are an emotional being, you will fail in the long run. You will not be able to sustain your strategy for long. Housel writes, people do not want the mathematically optimal strategy. They want the strategy that maximizes how well they sleep at night. You want the same. You want to save for the future without sacrificing your peace in the present. Imagine if you had a target of saving $100,000 in 3 years, but your income was only $40,000 annually. To meet your goal in 3 years, you'd have to save more than $30,000 annually, leaving you only $6,000 to spend. That is not feasible, and you might even end up being homeless. In the long run, you will abandon your saving strategy. Be reasonable and spread out your savings in a manner that maintains peace. Lesson 12. You will change, be ready. People and their goals will change over time. Be ready for yours to do the same. Imagining a goal is easy and fun. Imagining a goal in the context of the realistic life stresses that grow with competitive pursuits is something entirely different. Let's take another example. There's a girl called Mary. Mary spent her entire childhood excited about becoming a doctor. In high school, Mary worked hard and scored excellent grades to study medicine in college. Halfway through her residency, Mary realizes it is a grueling career. But Mary persisted because she had invested time and resources to achieve the goal. However, 4 years into her practice as a licensed doctor, Mary quits. The stressors of life and the job demands became too much for her. Mary could not have predicted how she would feel once she achieved her goal. You cannot predict this either. When planning for the future, remember that the world around you, your goals, and your desires will change. People underestimate how much they will change in the future. So be prepared for the things you want now to change. Lesson 13. Everything has a price, but not all prices appear on the labels. We all agree that nothing is free, right? But do we truly know what this means in the economic context? Unfortunately, we don't always know what price we will pay until the bill is due. This ties back to our previous lesson, knowing when it's enough. Don't get greedy and resort to tricks to avoid the price. You may end up paying more than what you were avoiding. The benefits of long-term investment are not immediately apparent. And the price of playing tricks to avoid costs is not immediate either. So before you cut corners, remember the price to be paid is almost always hidden. For example, after watching this video, you might think compounding is simple. I'll just put my money in an index fund and let it compound for 30 years. But you have to know that there's a price to pay for that. It's not free money. The market might go down 20% in a day. Your portfolio might stay stagnant or decline for 5 years straight, and you may need to buy a house and need to sell your stock at a loss. That is the price of admission for investing, which is very important to remember when investing. Pay the price of admission and you will reap the rewards. Try to cheat the system in any way and you will fall on your face. The secret to creating wealth is developing soft skills that influence your behavior. Don't be seduced by pessimism when things appear to go wrong. And when things do go right, learn humility because nothing is as good or as bad as it seems. Most importantly, exercise patience when saving and investing so you can leverage the power of compounding.